Hello children, today I am going to discuss with you a chapter in history, that is early kingdoms. So one thing may hit in your mind, that how did early men become rajas, who elected them, what did they do during that time. So all these questions that arise in your mind, this chapter is answer to it. Now first you can see the word Janapada. What does this word means? It means the land where the Jana set his feet, or the Pada, and they settled there. So let us move and see what is given in your book. The later Vedic period saw further development of Aryans. So from the Vedic period to later Vedic period, there were further the Aryans developed more. In what way they developed? They learnt cultures and traditions, advanced farming techniques with tools made of iron, which helped in clearing forest and provide more lands for agriculture. So these were all the improvements from Vedic period to later Vedic period. Those who learnt the culture and tradition influenced others, and they set out to expand their territories, giving rise to many settlements. So those who had the knowledge, it was not like that they did not help others. Those who learned the culture and tradition influenced others, and they set out to expand their territories. In this way, they expanded their areas, giving rise to many settlements. As the settlements progressed, the strong and influential among them became Janapadas. So when they started to expand their areas, their territories, they became more strong, and they became Janapadas with a king as the leader of each Janapada. So there were king of each Janapada. Archaeologists have found many Janapadas. What are these? Purana Kila in Delhi, Hastinapura near Meerut, and Atranji Khera near Ita are some of the settlements excavated by archaeologists. What have they found? It was found that people lived in huts. Now, archaeologists, these are the areas in our country where there were Janapadas. Now, it was found that people lived in huts and kept cattle as well as other animals. So, they have found that these people during that time they lived in huts because they have become more advanced. They started to keep cattle. A variety of crops such as rice, wheat, barley, pulses, sugarcane, sesame, and mustard were grown. So variety of crops they started growing. Earthen pots of red and grey color were used. They made pots out of mud, and which it was of red and grey color. Painted grey ware, a special type of pottery consisting of designs of simple lines and geometric patterns, were found during excavation of these settlements. So, in these areas, it has also been found a famous handmade earthen pot, that is known as painted grey ware. Information about the Janapadas can be found in later Vedic texts like the Brahmanas, Upanishads, and Buddhist texts such as Jataka tales. So regarding these Janapadas, we can find out in these Vedic literatures. These texts serve as important sources of information about this period. So we are all able to know about these history because of these texts written in the Brahmanas, Upanishads and Jataka tales. Now next topic that you can see is Mahajanapada. Now, about nearly 2500 years ago, some Janapadas became more important than others and they were known as Mahajanapadas. So what happened? Some of the Janapadas gained more territory and power, which led to the evolution into Mahajanapadas. So when the Janapadas established more territories, they gained more power, they formed Mahajanapadas. There were 16 Mahajanapadas in the Indian subcontinents in the 6th century. Some of them like Kosala, Vatsa, Magadha, Vaji and Avanti were more prominent. So if you see the map, you can see there are Kosala, you can see here Vaji, Magadha. These are some of the important or renowned Mahajanapadas. Next. Mahajanapadas had fortified capitals. What does this mean? Capital cities were walled. That means their cities had huge fort-like walls in order to safeguard them from attacks of hostile neighbors and so that the king could have better control over the people. So they had high walls. Resources were needed along with extensive planning to build the wall in order to fortify the area. Now, forts were built maybe because people were afraid of attacks of other kings and they needed protection, or some rulers wanted to show that how rich and powerful they were by building large, tall, and big walls around their cities. So, and the land and the people living inside this fortified area could be controlled easily by the king. Thinking, so these were maybe all these reasons for which forts were probably built. But to build this fort, they required great deal of planning. They required many resources. So resources were needed along with extensive planning to build the wall in order to fortify the area. Large number of bricks and stones had to be prepared for the wall, which meant allocating thousands of men, women and children as laborers. So to build the high walls, they needed large number of bricks and stones were needed. So these were prepared for to make the walls. For to make all these things, thousands of men, women and children were allocated as laborers. In those times, a Mahajanapada could either be a republic or a monarchy. The rulers of each Mahajanapada maintained armies. Now, as we have told that most these Mahajanapadas, there was a king So the new king had to maintain army, soldiers, and he has to the ruling system was either it may be republic or it may be it, it was either republic or a monarchy. So the rulers of each Mahajanapada maintained armies. The soldiers in the armies were paid regular salaries by king. Some findings suggest that the use of punch-marked coins as means of payment. So these Mahajanapadas had to keep well soldiers in their uh, and they had to maintain them. They were all paid. They were given salaries. The soldiers in the armies were paid regular salaries by the king. And some evidence has been found, that is the punch marked coins has been found, which was a mode of payment. Now you can see, do you know, Emperor Alexander of Macedonia came to India some 2300 years back, but he did not advance beyond the river Bias because his soldiers were scared of the great armies that Mahajanapadas had. So you can imagine that the army contents of the Mahajanapadas were so much strong, and they were all that these Alexander had also was afraid to enter into the so to advance uh, beyond the river Bias. Now here are the, if you see this map, there are, you can see the Mahajanapadas dotted marks and their capitals. Now moving to the next part is republic and monarchy. Just now we had discussed that the Rajas, who the Mahajanapadas, could either be a republic or a monarchy. So what is a republic? What is a monarchy? The republics did not have a hereditary king. So in republic, who was the head? They did not have any hereditary king. Instead, they had an elected tribal council. Power was not in the hands of one person but was held collectively by a group of selected few or the head of families and clans. So the head of the state was elected for a fixed period of time, and his position was not hereditary. Decisions were taken by a group of people or by the head of the families. The Sakyas and the Lichavis in present-day Bihar were republics of those time. So these two places were the places where they were republics. Some republics were absolutely independent, but some joined together to form a confederacy like Bhaji. So some formed republics and some made their own. They had their different way of ruling. Bhaji was one of the principal Mahajanapadas of ancient time. So it had a different form of government. Bhaji was little different, though there was republic. The monarchies were absolutely different and were ruled by kings. So as you can see that in republic there was no hereditary king. They had elected tribal council. But in monarchy it was different. They had a king and the system was hereditary. So and they were very much, these monarchies were very powerful than the republics. And what the monarchy, the king used to say as uh, the ruler, or in monarchy, the ruler, what he would say will be the law. His word was the law. So the system was hereditary, and Magadha, Avanti, and Kosala were monarchies. So these areas were ruled by the monarchies, by the hereditary kings. Now, taxation system. Now, the kings needed money to maintain large armies and fortify their territories. So, you all know that the rulers of Mahajanapadas were building huge forts and maintaining big armies. So, where would they get all the, from where would they provide salary to these armies? So they needed some resources. So to meet all these their requirements, they started collecting taxes. Now, so this taxation system had started then, and still we are also paying taxes. So the king needed money to maintain large armies and fortify their territories. Revenue was not collected from the people regularly. It was not collected regularly. Agriculture was the main occupation and therefore the main source of income for king, along with occasional gifts from nobles or other kings. At first, there was no taxation system, but later on, this system, they had taxes on crops were collected from people, because most of the peoples were farmers during that time. So what they had to do, as the kingdom grew, the king further fortified his cities and strengthened his armies. He required regular flow of income. Hence, he started collecting taxes regularly. So later, when there was in need of money, the king started a system, that was taxation system. The farmer had to give 1 by 6 of their produce as bhaga or share. So this was known as bhaga or share. 1 by 6 of what he produced had to be given to the king. This was primary source of revenue, since most of the people during that time were farmers. So most of the during that time, most of the people were farmers. So agriculture was their main occupation. So they had to. This was the system of providing tax to the king. Production of crops increased as the farmers had the efficient iron plow, which could be used on large areas. So as they had became more advanced, they started they had built more tools, and in this way the agriculture areas also became more. So they had iron plows, and so their production has also increased. The farmers in this period also started transplantation. So what is transplantation? This means that they grew saplings separately and then planted them in the fields. For suppose you when you have somewhere noticed that for growing rice, the seeds are thrown scattered, and when they become little, it grows into saplings, they are then transplanted to the fields so that they can grow properly, proper air, water can reach them, so that production would be nice, and there would be no destroy of many seeds. So transplantation enhanced the production. Thus, king earned more revenue. So if there are more crops, then the king could get more amount of shares. So people practicing other profession also had to pay taxes in the form of cash or service to the king. For example, people practicing different crafts, such as being a weaver or a carpenter, had to work for king for a specific amount of time in the form of tax. So the person who were weavers or carpenters, they had to work for the king. They had to whatever work what was his profession here, he went to the empire, and there he did all the works in free. That was the that the work that he had supplied over there, he did over there, was in the form of tax. People who practiced animal husbandry and were herders paid their taxes in the form of animals and animal products. So those who were herders, they had to pay animals, or they had to give the animal products to the king. Forest products were the taxes of the people whose profession required them to go to jungles such as hunters. So the things that they collected from the forest, they used to give part of it to the king. It was their it was the share that was given to the king from the products that they got from the forest. Trade was also a source of revenue, with tax being collected for buying and selling goods. So from by doing trade, they had also collected some tax, because in the form of by buying and selling things, they had implied tax onto it. So there were also taxes on goods that were brought and sold through the trade. So everybody had to pay. The farmers had to pay, the craftsperson had to pay, the herders had to pay, the trade persons had to pay, and the hunters, the forest people, or those who went for hunting, they had also to pay the taxes. So this comes to the end of today's class. In the next class, we will discuss about the next portion of the chapter. So till then, all of you, take care and goodbye.